With all this talk about Donald Trump's indictment, New York City preparing for unrest, mobilizing all their cops, now we're seeing D.C. is preparing for much the same. Though they say there is no direct threat in the Capitol, they are preparing for major unrest in the event of an indictment of the former president, Donald Trump. But all this talk has got a lot of people talking about civil war. And we have this story from the Rolling Stone saying that posters on the Donald are calling for civil war if the former president is indicted. Posters on the Donald, are they referring to patriots.win? They're saying chatter of a patriot moat around Mar-a-Lago to keep Trump out of jail. Well, I can say this. The news, as to why you probably clicked a video like this, is that D.C. is preparing in case there's a protest. But that's about it. No direct threats or anything, but a coordinating body called the Joint Information Center, which includes 12 local agencies that are put on standby, will be stood up on Tuesday, the official said, in case an indictment comes down. So D.C. is mobilizing for unrest. I don't know if there's going to be any. The news we're hearing is that the indictment won't come today. There's just more testimony, and there will be a decision tomorrow, but we'll see. Maybe one doesn't come down at all. The media is thirsty for the story. Obviously, those of us who work in independent or alternative media are interested in the story as well. Donald Trump himself posted on Truth that he will be arrested Tuesday, despite the fact, or they will be indicted Tuesday. There's no direct evidence that is the case. I think Trump was just responding to news stories where they said early next week this may happen. However, I'm not sure if the Tuesday official day was named in these news reports that I read. It just said early next week. So maybe Trump assumed, or maybe someone told him they could be done on Tuesday. There was some testimony on Monday. It may be tomorrow. But all this talk has got us into the realm of civil war once again. And I saw this video from a comedian that's being shared. WuTang Kids posted it. And I'm not going to play it just yet. I want to go over this in a second. But it's they wrote, if MAGA wants a civil war, here's a preview of how that'll go for them. This video perfectly exemplifies, rather surprisingly to me, why the left will lose a civil war. Because they fundamentally know nothing about warfare, about politics, economics, etc., as exemplified by what they find funny. And it's strange because a lot of people are saying, oh, let him have satire, Tim. Let the man tell his joke about MAGA. He says MAGA, people will lose or whatever. He calls it NRA people. I don't know when the bit is from, but they're like, let them have their jokes. And I'm like, the issue is every joke has its truth. And what's making them laugh here is the idea that the right is a bunch of inept morons who will be wiped out by the military. They are wrong completely. And in their ignorance and ego, it exemplifies why I think they would lose in an actual civil war. Take a look at Spain. I mean, granted, you had in Russia, the communists won, but in Spain, it was the other way around. But first, let's talk about how the media is framing it. Posters on the Donald are calling for civil war, they say. Oh, my. Well, how would we get there? Rolling Stone writes, Trump supporters on the online MAGA forum, The Donald. Are they really? Is that it? The Donald? The Donald hasn't existed for a long time, so I don't know what they're talking about. It's patriots.win. Are coming unglued to the possibility of the former president's impending indictment, going so far as to suggest that a Civil War 2.0 may be imminent and proposing that the formation of a patriot moat to prevent law enforcement from arresting him. Surround Mar-a-Lago or wherever he currently is and prevent law enforcement from entering, one person wrote. They did not. It doesn't look like they actually said MAGA moat. It looks like the media made that one up. I think they're talking about humans. This prompted another to reply, what if they use choppers to circumvent the patriot moat? Okay, so there it was. Still, other supporters brought up the possibility of a civil war. Well, looks like we may have World War III and our second civil war at the same time. One poster wrote, just one of many references to a potential civil war on the forum in the last 2 days. They act like it's unique to the right, when in fact the idea of a civil war originated of a second civil war, not with conservatives, but with the corporate press and a Princeton professor. Of course, just like with Trump, Trump will read the New York Times, repeat what he hears, and then they will call it fake news because they are a deranged bunch of psychopathic zombies. This should be treated as a declaration of war, another posted. Yet another Trump supporter wrote, looks like they are accelerating the civil war to this week, Hold the effing line, guys. Don't be afraid to use your constitutional rights. Remember, 2A is there in case 1A fails. A reference to using weapons protected by the Second Amendment. While these forums are full of bluster, it's important to remember that many of the ideas floated in the forums of the Donald came to fruition during the January 6th attack, including suggestion to erect a gallows on Capitol grounds. You see what they do here? You see the game they play? The gallows that was erected was like a miniature mock model that no one could have even stood on. It was like a few 2x4s with some plastic on it. The left does it all the time. In fact, the left has built real guillotines. Erect a gallows. The website The Donald played a far more central role in the January 6th Capitol insurrection than was previously known. Daniel J. Jones, who worked as an FBI analyst and Senate investigator, told the Washington Post in April of 2021. There are thousands of posts with tens of thousands of comments detailing plans to travel to Washington, blah, 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 blah. It's all lies. Trump himself called for supporters to protest en masse if he is arrested. Protest, take our nation back, he wrote on Truth Social. It's an eerie echo of Trump's words during his speech on January 6th when he told the crowd, we fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. Just before they attacked the Capitol. When what actually happened is Trump said, we're going to go peacefully march and cheer on some politicians as they do the right thing. Thank you very much. Let's go home. That's what he said. They're like, but he said fight. He said fight. That doesn't mean anything other than to be physical. While the left says fight all the time. It's funny because we who pay attention to this stuff can reflect on what the left says and does, but the left can't seem to do the same for the right. The left will scream, fight like hell, and they'll throw bricks. Then they'll say, they said to fight. That's the game they play. The gallows. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. The ugly elitism of the American right. No one hates ordinary people like the Republicans and their media enablers do, by Tom Nichols. That's right. The elite media apparatus, the wealthy armchair elites sitting there opining on why it's actually you, working class conservative and independent voter, who hates yourself. I love this one because they talk about Civil War in it. But let's do this. Let's get to the brass tacks. Let me show you this video about where they think it's going. WuTang is for the children tweets, if MAGA wants a civil war, here's a preview of how that will go for them. Okay, let's play the comedian's clip.
Which is why I'm proposing we test their theory and once a year have a head-to-head showdown. Say 100 members of the NRA versus, I don't know, 2 members of the military. Broadcasted on Fox Christmas Day. Like, Merry Christmas and welcome to the 2022 NRA Military Showdown. Let's go down to the field of battle, meet one of our NRA combatants. Sir, what's your name? What kind of weapon do you work with? He's like, my name's Andy Baker, and I got an AR-15, wearing Kevlar head to toe. Andy, how confident are you, scale of 1 to 10? Fucking a million.
Very funny.
We're gonna check in with the military real quick, and they cut to one guy by himself in a bunker, and he's like, my name's Staff Sergeant Jeremiah Walker. And they're like, Jeremiah, what kind of weapon do you work with? And he's like, look, I don't know if this is fair, but I'm working with a drone. Yeah, it's equipped with 8 Hellfire missiles and a high-powered camera. As you can see on this monitor here, the NRA fellas are actually in just one big cluster. So I'm gonna, we started, all right? Yeah, so I'm gonna hit this button right here. Yeah, now they're all dead. That'll do it for this year's NRA Military Showdown.
So obviously what he's talking about is not necessarily civil war. He's talking about people who say that you need weapons to defend yourself against tyrannical government, and thus you will be up against the military. However, WuTang has framed in the context of what would happen in a civil war. I'm sorry, I have to do this first. I am not a military guy. Many of you probably are, and many of you probably caught the problem with his bit, which is still an example of why I think they'll lose a civil war. Hold on. And it's that when I saw this, I was wondering, like, is a staff sergeant going to be piloting a drone? Would they place a staff sergeant? So I don't know the exact answer, but I just checked right now, and it says second lieutenant. Looking at the rank and job description of Air Force drone pilots, you'll need to hold at least a rank of second lieutenant to qualify for the position. It's an O1 second lieutenant. Salary could be 41 to 52,000. So I'm pretty sure that outranks a staff sergeant, right? So let me just, staff sergeant's what, E6? Staff sergeant E6. All right, so I'm not a military guy, so I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't think that person will be flying the drone. But anyway, I digress. It's an example of this dude's making a joke. It's fine to make jokes and try and be funny and all that stuff. I get it. But it shows their dramatic and deep misunderstanding of conflict, combat, and what war's really like. 100 guys all clustered together with Kevlar. Is that what you think the average American gun owner would be doing? He's like, it's 2 military guys and just 100 guys. It's funny. The U.S. has had very bad luck against the likes of the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the Viet Cong. Hey, let's go back in time. Dudes with guns are hard to stop. That's it. Too many of them. Here's what will really happen. Now, this guy's talking about, let's prove that people with guns can't defeat the military by staging an event where we blow them up, which makes literally no sense. He's making a joke because the idea he's trying to convey to people, and this is what you got to understand. People say, it's just a joke, it doesn't mean anything. Every joke has its truth, has a meaning. And his point is, the worldview he is framing for you, and the reason you're laughing, is because you think it is so stupid of these NRA guys to think they can go up against a drone, and they can. Easily. Very easily. I mean, if it was so easy to use drones to take out your enemy, there would be no Palestine-Israel conflict. Yet for some reason, all the drone strikes in Palestine don't seem to do anything. They keep popping up. The Al-Qassam brigades, the missiles keep getting in. How could that be? It's almost like people are required for conflict against other people. Simply put, a drone does not occupy a street corner. And the other funny thing about this video is the assumption by WuTang for kids is that in a civil war, the military would be on the side of the left. That's how they see it. Their worldview right now is that there is the United States and then this weird faction of people over here who have separated themselves from it. When in reality, it's actually them who have separated themselves from it. Why? Well, because if you believe in traditional values in the American Constitution, then you are actually the American. And if you believe in multicultural international democracy, then you are the new element, not the old. You are the introduction of something else into another land. So they view themselves as the order, as the establishment, when in fact, they're the chaos. They do whatever they're told to do. They believe whatever they're told to believe. And they will firebomb your buildings and cause harm to you. But the military is made up of people. And in the American Civil War in the 1860s, the Confederate leaders were West Point graduates. They're officers. They went to West Point, same as the Union. Someone was telling us the other day that Lee, I think it was, opposed slavery, but was going to fight for his home state. And this is true for many people. Regardless of their view on slavery or not, most of them fought not because of slavery. They fought because of their state. Slavery was the catalyst. It drove the conflict. It's complicated. I know there's a lot of other issues too. It was a principal driver, fear that the federal government Abraham Lincoln was opposed to slavery, so he would get rid of it. When the argument from the North was that they were just trying to stop the expansion of slavery. Mind you, the North was extremely racist. I mean, they're people who believe the North was like, racism is bad and slavery is wrong, when in reality, they were just like, preserve the Union. It wasn't an issue of not being racist. Segregation persisted in the North until the 1950s. For 100 years later, they were still treating Black Americans, despite being freed, as second-class citizens. They were like, okay, you're free now, but you can't come into our cities. The North was ridiculously racist. And Sherman was insanely racist. We had Shane, who wrote Tales from the Inverted World, Ghosts of the Civil War. Check it out at ghostofthecivilwar.com. Buy the book. Talked about how Sherman destroyed a bridge, killing a bunch of freed slaves who were following him. The dude was merciless and evil. And he was the North. It's war, baby. What they don't understand about Civil War is if it ever comes to it, I tweeted about it. I'm like, the military is not just going to be on the side of the left. That's insane to think. Many of them will be. They're trying to purge the ranks and bring in more of their crackpots they're doing with police departments. You'll have people who are former military leading new military. It's not going to be some NRA guy sending in a cluster. You're going to get veterans. You're going to get dudes who are in their late 30s who are like former JSOC guys who are going to be doing everything by the book and well. And then if you really put them up against two military guys, yeah, they're going to win. It's insane to think that one military guy in a bunker somewhere can defeat 100 special forces dudes or just 100 dudes in general. Is your Hellfire missile going to kill all of them at once? They're all clustered together. Why would they be? This is what these people think. They don't get it. They think I have a drone, therefore I won the war. Good luck occupying a street corner with a drone. Certainly you can blow up a car or something and target certain people. There's a lot you can do with a drone. But you can't occupy a street corner. You can't occupy a building. All you can do is destroy something. A human being is needed for the control of a space. A human being with weapons or tanks or something might be good, but even in a tank, you ever see a video, like they have videos of like a guy runs up on a tank, pops it open and throws a grenade in or something? I don't know about videos, but like stories of that. Tanks are great for specific purposes, but human beings are the definitive final action point. The human who must control, influence, and communicate. These people live in a crackpot reality, man. I get it. This guy's just telling a joke, and he's telling a joke about, look at AR-15 is trending. Mar-a-Lago is trending. But this perfectly exemplifies where the left is when they view Civil War. There will be no opposition to them. They will control the military and the police, despite the fact that they hate the military and the police. They complain about all these things, and they think those things will come to their aid. Well, sometimes they do, especially right now. The police defend Antifa. Oh, do they defend Antifa? They love it. These police officers may as well get on their knees like Drew Barrymore and thank Antifa because the cops aren't doing anything to stop them. They'll push them around. They'll say, but my boss won't let me. Oh, you've also got the drag queen sex shows for kids. And the cops are like, but I don't want to get involved. I can't do anything. Yeah, they protect them. So why would Antifa on the left and WuTang for Kids think anything else? Well, fair point, I suppose. But these people, these officers, these military members who are sitting there going, well, shucks, my boss or my commanding officer told me I have to do it. But what happens when the system breaks? What happens when they're like, I don't know if I have a commanding officer anymore? What happens when a commanding officer turns out to be MAGA and he tells his those below him, we're going to do this, that, or otherwise? What happens when Donald Trump and Joe Biden stand before a bunch of people in the military and they yell, arrest that man? How many of the people in the military are going to be like, oh, that's Trump? Let's put it this way. Right now, they might not listen to Donald Trump, who's not the president. But let's say Trump gets elected. He's president-elect. Joe Biden is lame duck president. What happens in a situation where they both point at each other and say, arrest that man? Then what do you do? The outgoing or the incoming? Which one? Well, the outgoing president's the one with the powers. But you're going to be like, this guy's going to be president in a week. And then he's going to pardon himself. And then what happens to me? Will I get charged with sedition or treason? So what do? They might side with Trump. Will they then arrest Joe Biden? I'm not saying Trump would actually do that. I'm saying these people really don't understand the basics of conflict and human psychology. Maybe they should just read about modern history and what happens in countries like Egypt, what happens in countries like Libya or Syria, but they really just don't get it. Hey, Syria is a really interesting country. How did it work out for that government? Oh, Libya. Huh. Didn't Gaddafi have military powers? That's weird. They dragged him into the street and they killed him. Granted, you had foreign airstrikes and things like that. But the point is, when these people say like, you can't go up against the government. Have you looked at any country where they've literally gone up against the government and the government has lost? It happened quite literally in this country when it started. founded quite literally by people going up against the crown and saying, we are now independent. What is this idea that the government always wins and you can't beat them? Yo, the crown had frigates and man-o-wars. They had ships, they had warships, they had giant navies. They were, after the war, kidnapping, or I think during and after, kidnapping Americans on the high seas and forcing them into servitude on their ships. They had power. But how did we win? Because they could not occupy street corners. Now, these people don't get it, though. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with D.C. or New York or Donald Trump's indictment. For all I know, as I'm recording this, we're waiting, and they make the announcement. There's a fake post going around, a bunch of them, where they're like, Trump has been indicted. Yeah. Shut up with that stuff. But I guess we'll wait and see. And in the meantime, we'll have conversations about why these people just don't understand anything about the real world. They're in their ivory towers. They've not been on the ground in ages. They've not touched grass, despite the fact they think they do. They live in giant concrete cubicles that smell like sour milk. Well, we'll see. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.